Native American story about a craft with creatures from the stars that fell from the sky. The UFO phenomenon has existed throughout human history, and extraterrestrials hide under the names of many gods or guests from the sky who are referred to in folk myths and legends around the world. Native American Indians have similar myths, and some of them are relatively recent. That is, they appeared in the 20th century. Hardy Circular Clark from the Cherokee and Choctaw Indian tribes, and his major is as a professor of Native American history at the University of Montana. Clark investigates Native American history and legends and their situations, their current situation, as well as their myths and legends, some of which have extraterrestrial alien sky god themes. He says stories like these vary by radical groups, so it's hard to say if there's any specific connection between them, but there's no doubt that these stories are very strange indeed. Some of them specifically say that you can fly in the sky and travel in a craft throughout the galaxy. And when you die, you are in some place which is also in our galaxy. And in general, there's a general idea that space plays a big role in a person's death and afterlife, and that actually people never die. They just go to some other dimension and can communicate with the living from there, Clark says. According to him, there are many legends in his records that tell of star people or entities that came from the sky flying in boats and crafts and taught the Native American tribes wisdom. And there are even stories that these entities could make sexual contact with humans. Rarely described directly as aliens from outer space, they are mostly referred to as spirits or gods who came to the Native Americans from another realm. Hardy Circular Clark even wrote a book about such stories called Encounters with Star People, Untold Stories of American Indians. The story, which follows, was told to her by an Indian named Harrison, a member of one of the tribes from the northern plains of America, and this story happened in 1945, which is also 2 years before the Roswell incident. Harrison was just 12 years old at the time. One night he was sitting in his grandfather's house when they both heard a loud noise like an earthquake. Looking out of their house, they saw their horses running away in fear. In the morning, his grandfather went out to look for the horses, but he soon returned home worried. The boy asked him what had happened, and he only told him to follow him. They walked a little in the field, and there the grandfather showed him a large, fresh crater in the ground, at the bottom of which was a large metal object with an opening on the side. The object appeared to be severely damaged, as if it had been dropped from a great height. Harrison and his grandfather then stood on the edge of the crater for several minutes, not knowing what it was and not saying a word. The boy's grandfather then finally descended into the crater. Strange creatures can often be seen in ancient cave paintings, and these are images of extraterrestrial aliens, which the Native Americans considered gods. He later said that when he looked inside the object, he saw several humanoid creatures, which were very tall, at least 2.5 meters tall, and they were dressed in green overalls, and the skin on the exposed areas of their bodies was translucent so that blood vessels could be seen through it. The eyes of these creatures were an indeterminate color, as they constantly changed color. The creatures were very surprised at the sight of man and were even afraid. They tried to move away, and when he took a step towards them and tried to speak to them, they suddenly disappeared. However, they did not disappear completely. These strange star people that Harrison and his family had seen near their home reappeared in the area. The creatures always kept their distance from humans and disappeared without a trace at the slightest attempt by humans to approach them, as if they had some kind of camouflage that made them invisible. Therefore, people soon gave up their efforts to approach them. They simply watched the star people from a distance and saw that they were walking on the ground and picking up something from it, stones, plants, as if collecting samples for study. Harrison's grandfather tried to be friendly with them, repeatedly inviting them into his house and giving them food several times to try, and it finally worked. The aliens began to get closer and closer, and then they contacted Harrison's grandfather and invited him to visit their ship again, which was still at the bottom of a large crater. The creatures communicated with Harrison's grandfather using telepathy, and when he boarded their ship, they told him about their kingdom, quote unquote, which they described as a very dry and desolate place with a harsh climate. Because of this, the aliens were forced to live in underground cities with large domes. They said that they have been visiting Earth for thousands of years, but very rarely came into contact with humans, but watched them by studying them from a distance as humans study wild animals. In addition, the spacemen told Harrison's grandfather that during all their arrivals on Earth, only 2 of their ships crashed, and that they themselves are now waiting for help from a large mothership, which is somewhere in space. While inside their vessel, Harrison's grandfather saw many strange devices, unknown devices with technologies beyond his understanding. A little later one night, the Harrison family heard a loud noise, and when they went outside, they saw a huge cylindrical object in the sky hovering over the crater with the wrecked boat, with the wrecked craft. When in the morning they went to this place, there was no craft nor its strange crew in the crater. And soon the army vanished at this place. The army arrived at this place. That is, the armed forces came, closing off the entire area and confiscating the house of Harrison's grandfather. Later they destroyed the house and the entire neighboring area, and in the place they created an artificial lake. So this is something that recently happened in 1945. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.